Just like to congratulate all the Ministers of State who have been appointed. Ceann Cole, before I start, if I may, just very briefly, and to sympathies to all those who didn't make it, and there's quite a number of those too, of course, but the best of luck to those who got there. Taoiseach, 2 weeks ago, about 26 disability and caring focused organisations across the country lost their funding under the scheme, the SSSO scheme, which is there to fund community and voluntary organisations. This has been a devastating blow for people in the health and disability area. All 11 organisations in the Neurological Alliance, for example, have lost their funding. And we're talking about overall 1.2 million covered across the 26 organisations. Organisations with very, very rare, or who support people with very rare conditions as a result of genetic inheritance and so on. So, for example, Taoiseach, the Irish Deaf Society has had to close its Deaf Forward advocacy services. The Motor Neuron Disease Association has had to end its frontline visitor programme. Chronic Pain Ireland faces closure. MS Ireland will lose its information advocacy and research officer. The Alzheimer's Society will not be able to put in place early intervention services for people with dementia. Chronic Pain Ireland will cease operations in less than 12 months. The Huntington Disease Association has been forced to end direct frontline services, such as counselling, equipment and carer meetings, due to loss of core funding. They got 22,000 from this scheme a year, and you guys have cut it. A very rare degenerative condition. It's an appalling act by your government, Taoiseach. Muscular Dystrophy Ireland's frontline facilities manager post cannot now be filled, and the Irish Heart Foundation Stroke Actions Community Stroke Support Programme will be severely curtailed. I think Fintan O'Toole, columnist to the Irish Times today, described this action by the government as simply crass stupidity. And it's very difficult indeed to disagree with that. And there are many other organisations as well, Taoiseach. And these are self-help organisations helping volunteers out there to help people with these very, very rare conditions. Now, Taoiseach, the Taoiseach just said when she was elected as Labour leader party, perhaps she said, to borrow a phrase, we govern perhaps too much with the head and not enough with the heart. This decision reveals to me that the government is governing neither with the head nor the heart in terms of allowing decisions like this to go through.
We're over time.
So could I ask you, Taoiseach, to intervene and to ensure that that 1.2 million is restored to the organisations concerned? At a minimum, Taoiseach. They've suffered too much already. There is no justification for this.
Thank you. Taoiseach.
As Deputy Martin is aware, there is a formal process of appeal available to any organisation which has had a reduction or a cut in allocations made to them. I'd point out to you, Deputy, that the government across all departments do take the disability sector very seriously indeed. It currently provides almost 5 billion to disability services right across the different sectors. 1.4 billion of that is provided for health and personal social services through the Health Service Executive's National Service Plan for 2014. There are particular residential services provided for 9,000 people by 60 agencies in 1,200 different locations. These range from small to larger or group setting community group homes that support independent living. Day services are provided to 22,000 people living with intellectual or physical or sensory challenges or with autism at 850 different locations around the country and by 80 different organisations. There are now 6,000 people with intellectual or physical disability availing of respite residential support, and on top of that there are 3.7 million hours of personal assistant home support hours being provided. So there are also a variety of other services provided under the Disability Services Programme, including respite, early childhood family support, community-based medical, nursing and therapy services, rehabilitative training, aids and appliances. And right now, most disability services are provided by the voluntary or the non-voluntary sector. I'd also say to you, Deputy, that as I stated in last week's statement of government priorities, The Taoiseach and I have committed to implementing the report of the Value for Money and Policy Review of the Disability Services Programme. This will revolutionise the way the state interacts with people with disabilities, and it will mean a whole new model of personalised, community-based service, providing greater choice for people who have a disability challenge. And this will mean a very significant restructuring of the disability service by linking budgets to activity, to outputs, to quality and outcomes for the service users. These are important developments, Deputy Martin, in what are very difficult financial circumstances. They indicate the government's commitment to improving the quality of life for our people who have a disability and to allocate resources that are available based on a personal need. And we are adamant that public services provided to them must be and should be as effective and as responsive as possible. So I'd suggest that for any group that has had a reduction in an allocation made to them, there is a formal independent appeals process available, and I would recommend that they should follow that and make their case accordingly.
I don't know what planet you inhabit. I'm talking about 1 million. Huntington Disease Association, I'm talking about 22,000. Would you forget your appeals process and sort it out? Because if you had a national disability strategy, this would not have happened in the first place. It's meant to allow for cross-cutting decision-making. You know what happened here. And Minister Hogan gave this careful assessment according to former Minister Dowd. He carefully assessed it before he announced the grants. They just took the money away from these organisations. The Neurological Alliance is only getting 60,000 per annum. 60. It will have to cease operations by the end of the year as a result of this decision. Taoiseach, there's no heart in this. This is appalling what you've done here. There's no defence of it and no justification of it. And it's not. And if you read,
sorry, Deputy, put the question.
The Disability Federation of Ireland, John Dolan, a speech he made. And here's what he said. At this rate, he writes, by the end of the year, we will no longer have the basic elements in place to support people with disabilities. Your disability strategy is in shreds. You haven't never had a coordinated disability strategy for the last 3 years.
Question, please.
You've been cutting left, right and centre. The respite grant is down a fortune. You've some nerve even to mention it in here because of the cuts that you took out in it.
Thank you.
Despite all the language, the rhetoric and the gobbledygook of just there, at the heart of government, there's no clear coordinated focus on disability. And the fact that organisations like this
Thank you, Deputy.
could lose such paltry sums of money is the clearest manifestation of that. I'm asking you again, Taoiseach, will you intervene, sort it out and reallocate that million to the organisations concerned?
Thank you.
You're very strong on the rhetoric, Deputy Martin, but your memory seems to have slipped again. You're the person who drove the €16.40 cut per week for people with disability. You're the person in the party that did that. You're also the person representing the party that cut the blind person's allowance not once but twice without any consultation whatsoever. You cut the mobility allowances, you cut the carers allowances, you cut the carers benefit, and not only that, but you removed the Christmas bonus that hit every one of these groups. Shame on you for what you did. And you have a chief coming in here talking about heart and head. As you're well aware, you've got up there on that side of the House, as is your duty and your responsibility, to say on many occasions we need an effective response to the spend of public money. We have a disability strategy, and as Minister Lynch has pointed out, it is now moving to implement that disability strategy nationally. That's what's involved here. And the point is that public carried out the independent assessment of the effectiveness of the spend of public monies on these services, and there is an appeal process there for any group that has had a reduction or a cut in its allocation. It's for that purpose that public carried out the independent assessments of these allocations to see that they're spent most effectively for the people for whom they're destined, which is the person with disability in the first instance. But don't take that old nonsense from you that you come in with here every week.